Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LiUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferenc.
The first major potential strike of the year, and it could be happening any day. On the show today, the Washington AFL-CIO and the United Labor Agency. Welcome to the Wednesday, January 3rd edition of America's Workforce, where we are available on at least 5 platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. 2 guests on the show today. We're going to start things off with April Sims. April was elected president of the Washington State Labor Council in October of 2022, and she was sworn in several months later to begin her 4-year term on January 1 of 2023. So she's got a year and a couple of days in that position, and she made history. She is the first woman to be elected president of the Washington State Labor Council and the first black woman elected to the presidency of an AFL-CIO state federation. Now, as president, April Sims is the chief executive officer of the council. She supervises all of its activities and staff and leads Washington's largest union organization, which represents over 600,000 union brothers and sisters. Do check out their website. A lot of information posted there, and it's real simple, wslc.org. And you can read about what they do for legislative advocacy, political action, race and labor, workforce development, organizing. We're going to touch on all of these. We're going to talk about the growing clean energy economy and building organizing capacity in general, especially along the coastlines there. You're seeing a lot of windmills, and obviously jobs that we want to see go union. We'll talk about their political program in Washington State and what they're doing to elect pro-worker champions to build political power. And April, we'll get into her background. She is the granddaughter of Louisiana sharecroppers and the daughter of a single mom. And she said, "I have seen the power of unions and how unions can change lives. The Great Migration brought her grandfather to Washington, where his union job provided economic dignity for his family, and her mom's union job pulled their family out of a cycle of poverty." She's going to get into all of that and more as our first guest. Later in the show, we're going to go to Dave Megenhardt. Dave is the executive director of one of our great sponsors here, the United Labor Agency. This is an agency that was formed in 1971 in Cleveland, Ohio, by the Cleveland AFL-CIO and the United Auto Workers and the Teamsters. Now, they morphed over the years, and in the last maybe 10, 15 years, they've been focusing on workforce development. We're going to talk about online classes. We touched on this last year with Dave. It's called Coursera. And also, they officially launched the ULA Counseling Center. A lot of issues concerning mental health today, and they are now accepting clients, so Dave will touch on that. And also, Built Environment Outreach. This is all about connecting the dots, especially in the underserved population of various communities, so we can connect so many people into good jobs, primarily building trade jobs. We often say it's the pathway to the middle class, and these are jobs that you earn while you learn. You could be making 6 figures in no time. And I'll tell you, it's across the board. And the ULA is providing all of this on their website. Just go to ulaagency.org. That's the website. Dave Megenhardt will be joining us later in the show. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. The segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management in what looks to be the first major potential strike of the new year. 1,500 UAW members, this would be at Local 933 in Indianapolis, are making preparations to walk out at the Allison transmission plant if the company continues to lowball workers in contract talks. Now, this company manufactures commercial-duty automatic transmissions and hybrid propulsion systems, and they're making money. They amassed over $500 million in profit through the first 3 quarters of last year, the CEO has raked in nearly $18 million in the last 2 years alone. Now, the union contract expired November 14th, and then on December 1st, the workers rejected a tentative agreement by 96%. Now, in a new video, and you could check this video out on the UAW website, the workers are speaking out about what they're fighting for and against management's unwillingness to come to a deal that honors the sacrifices and value what UAW members produce. Patty Evans is one of those workers. Patty said, "We gave up a lot during the recession, and in those years, there really hasn't been a reciprocation of the sacrifices we made. Just like when we lost cost of living. We don't have any assurance that going forward, we'll be able to keep up with inflation and things like that." Martha Brumette said, "I have some medical issues. You have a lot of wear and tear on your body here, on your wrists, on your back. Your feet are constantly tired. It takes a toll on you." And then there's Lisa Perry. Lisa said that she works 7 days a week, anywhere from 9, 10-hour work days. "I have gotten used to working those many hours so I can take care of my bills." Even a number of retirees are speaking out, saying, you know what, it wasn't always like this. Do check out that video, uaw.org. All right, we're going to take a quick break. April Sims on behalf of the Washington AFL-CIO coming up next.
This is America's Workforce.
It takes LiUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LiUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LiUNA at LiUNA.org. That's LiUNA.org.
Attention members of the Heat and Frost Insulators Union who are interested in traveling. Central Ohio has more construction projects on the books than anywhere in the U.S. Mega projects, large and medium-sized jobs are creating more work than our local 50 brothers and sisters can handle. Projects like Intel, the Honda LG battery plant, and multiple data centers for Facebook, Google, and Amazon offer union wages, overtime, and exciting incentives. Local 50 is seeking union travelers to meet the needs of its signatory contractors who can put you to work immediately. If you're a member in good standing and interested in the work opportunities in Central Ohio, visit insulators50.com/AWF travel for more information. This portion of the show brought to you by the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. For more information, please visit bacweb.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Auto Workers. Find more at uaw.org. America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at LiUNA.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferenc.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to the Pacific Northwest right now. And joining us on our live line is April Sims. I always like newcomers to the show, and I'll tell you, she's a dynamo, no doubt about that. April was elected president of the Washington State Labor Council in October of 2022. And then sworn in to begin her 4-year term in January of 2023. And she has been breaking down barriers. April is the first woman, the first to be elected to the Washington State Labor Council, and the first black woman elected to the presidency of an AFL-CIO state federation. So we've got a lot to talk about. She's got an interesting family history. We're going to get into all of that. and we're going to focus on what's going on with working people, especially in Washington State and all the union organizing going on there. April Sims, well, Happy New Year to you, and thank you for joining us here on America's Workforce. I'd like to talk a little bit about your journey, especially when I have new folks coming to the show. It's always good to find out where they started and how they got to where they are today. And I'll tell you, you got yourself in a really good position there. So thank you for joining us here on America's Workforce. Talk to me about your rise to the presidency there. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show. I'm excited to be here. I often say that it's a long, windy road that gets you where you're supposed to be. And so, my journey started, I would say that it was, I grew up understanding the union difference. It was my mom's union job that got our family off of welfare. I was raised by a single mom, and her union job that gave her economic dignity for the first time in her life. And so I saw the power of the labor movement from an early age. And, it was because my mom's union pension that she was able to retire with economic dignity and financial stability. And, she's living her best life right now. She's traveling. COVID restrictions have been lifted. And, she is a walking illustration of the generational impact that a good union job can have. And because I've had the opportunity to live that, it has impacted and guided my service in the labor movement. Mm-hmm. So when I got the opportunity to join a union, I did. Signed my union card right away. And, someone invited me to a union meeting. And at first I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go. When is it? They said it's 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night. I said, I'm not going to make it. I got to get my kids from daycare. I got to make dinner. I have to do all the things. But the shop steward in my workplace was trained in leadership identification and development. And he saw something in me long before I saw it in myself and kept inviting me to get involved in my union. And I did. And it was from that first union meeting that really got me involved in my union. After a couple of years of being an activist, I went to work for my union. I come out of AFSCME Council 28, which is the Washington State Employees Union. I worked for my union for a little over a decade. Came to work for the Washington State Labor Council in 2015 under the leadership of then President Jeff Johnson. Started my work as the field director. Later became the political and strategic campaigns director. Was elected secretary-treasurer in 2019 and elected president and sworn into office in 2023. And here I am. That's a long story for a short question, I know.
Well, like you said, it was a long and winding road, and we should give a shout out here to AFSCME Council 28 that you mentioned here. Are they a pretty big union in that neck of the woods there, April?
Yeah, they're actually one of our largest affiliates. AFSCME International has, nearly 60,000 members, and the state employees is the largest public sector union in our state.
So if you don't mind, let's reflect. I mean, you got a year under your belt as president of the Washington State Labor Council. It's not always easy. I'm just wondering some of the challenges that you encountered in your first year and what you see for the next 3 years.
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been a year. And you're right, it's a 4-year term, so we've got a lot of work to do. It's been an amazing year. I mean, I am privileged to serve in this capacity and was privileged to inherit a really dynamic labor movement with really strong leaders. I mean, you mentioned at the top of the segment that I'm the first woman in Washington and the first Black woman in the country elected to serve in this capacity. But equally exciting is Sharika Carter, who is our secretary-treasurer, is a Black woman from Ohio, so I got to give her a shout-out. And our historic and uncontested election means Washington is the only state to have a labor movement led by 2 Black women. So I have which I think said a little bit about mine and Sharika's leadership, but probably says even more about the labor movement in Washington State and the labor leaders that I'm privileged to serve alongside. And so you're right, this job is not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. It is the act of federating is not easy. Leading leaders is not easy. But the Washington State labor movement is in a really strong place right now. We just completed a strategic planning process with our board and with a number of key affiliates and stakeholders, and we've identified 4 key priorities. In addition to all of the amazing work that we're doing, our strategic planning process has elevated these 4 key priorities. The first is creating climate jobs. So making sure that we are approaching climate policy as economic policy and ensuring that this next generation of jobs in the green energy economy are good union jobs that pay a livable wage and provide a glide path to the middle class. The second is building independent political power that's not tied to a party or an ideology, which includes developing strategies to engage our politically conservative union members and make sure that they are connected to the fight for equality for all workers. The third is growing our organizing capacity. There is, as you know, been a rise in worker power and efforts to build worker power, and we're looking at our structures and our systems to make sure that we are able to take advantage of this moment so that the workers who want to join a union are able to do that, and that we have the capacity to support workers in their efforts. And then the fourth is connecting racial, gender, and economic justice. We have been doing anti-racism work at the Washington State Labor Council since 2015. And this new priority allows us to double down on that work and make sure that we're connecting racial, gender, and economic justice so that all workers see their fate connected to the fight for equity and justice. And so with those key priorities guiding our work for the next 3 years and the support of the leaders in Washington State, it is a really, really exciting time. For as challenging as it can be, it's a very exciting time.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, you got a lot on your agenda there, and I know you want to hit it head on. There's no doubt about that. If you don't mind, I want to tear this down a little bit. Let's start with green jobs. And you made a comment. There's some conservative members of unions that are still kind of saying, well, I don't know if we're ready to go in that direction. Maybe we're going a little too fast. You're hearing about these EV and these battery EV cars and battery plants. And wait a minute, we still have fossil fuel. We still have drilling to do. I'm just wondering, and I had a conversation with, I believe it was Joelle Hall. This was months back in 2023.
Oh, yeah. My sister from Alaska.
From Alaska. And, there's drilling. There's a lot of oil up there. And I'm just wondering, what's the reaction in your state, in Washington State? Because I know, especially with the coastline there, green jobs, windmills, solar, and all that kind of stuff. But how do you frame this right now, especially when it comes with this political debate on, green jobs, fossil fuel? How would you frame that, April?
Well, I think 2 things. One is one of the things I think that's been missing from the conversation historically, at least in Washington State, when we have talked about fossil fuels and clean jobs. What we've talked a lot about climate policy as environmental policy and its impacts to the environment, and we have really started to shift our focus to talking about climate policy as economic policy and as industrial policy. And with all of the investments from the federal government under President Biden's leadership, there are so many opportunities in Washington. You mentioned offshore wind, but also around investments in hydrogen. We were just awarded a hydrogen hub here in the Pacific Northwest, which is a commitment of $1 billion of investment in clean hydrogen production and distribution. That $1 billion investment from the federal government is coupled with a $7 billion investment from a number of these projects, which means $8 billion of investment in this infrastructure. And because labor was at the table, we were able to negotiate and ensure that any project over $1 million is required to have a project labor agreement, meaning that we can ensure that the construction of those projects will be good union jobs And I think when our affiliates see us at the table negotiating these real tangible benefits for their members, it takes away some of the fear about what that transition will look like, because we're ensuring that these new jobs that are coming on board as a result of these investments in the post-carbon economy will be good union jobs. And so I think reframing it as economic policy and then building out a vision for what these new jobs look like and negotiating to make sure that these will be good union jobs alleviates some of the fear that I think was driving some of the opposition to climate policy in the past.
April, you said something I want to go back on about labor being at the table, and it's so important that labor is at the table. But you know what? That doesn't always happen. Has that been a challenge in Washington State, in your opinion? How would you react to that?
Well, we are always fighting to be at the table, right? And we're not afraid to build a table if we're not invited at the one where the conversations are happening. But in Washington State, we proudly boast having the third highest union density in the nation. So we're just behind New York and Hawaii at nearly twice the national average. It means 1 in 5 workers in our state is represented by a union, which gives us some institutionally recognized power. And we're able to use that power to get seats at the table to make sure that we are centering the needs of workers, families, and communities, whether we're talking about climate policy or whether we're talking about other benefits or impacts to workers, whether it's unemployment or workers' comp. Our union density and the strong labor movement that we have here in Washington State, I think gives us an advantage and often puts us at tables so we don't necessarily have to. Well, we have to fight to make sure that we're there, but we probably don't have to fight as hard as some states that maybe have lower union density.
Well, 20%, 1 out of 5, that's 20%. That is 10 times what it is in South Carolina. So you are very, very fortunate to have that union density over there in Washington State. April Sims joining us on our live line today. She is the president of the Washington State Labor Council, which is affiliated with the AFL-CIO, WSLC.org. I forgot to mention that at the top of the interview. WSLC.org. More to come from April right after this.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferenc.
It takes LiUNA to power North America with affordable energy. The men and women of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, have the skills needed to build and maintain oil, natural gas, nuclear, solar, and wind projects that are shaping America's energy future. From new energy tech to retrofitted facilities, LiUNA members do it all. Find out what it takes to be powered by LiUNA at LiUNA.org. That's LiUNA.org.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Iron Workers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
A great union requires a reliable election system. Survey and Ballot Systems is a trusted election partner with more than 30 years of expertise in managing union elections. By partnering with SBS, your union can ensure it gets an auditable process and a high level of customer service. SBS is here to help you conduct your union vote securely, transparently, and with trust building always in mind. Visit surveyandballotsystems.com to learn more.
The Heat and Frost Insulators and Allied Workers are proud to be a title sponsor for America's Workforce Radio. The Insulators Union is leading the way in the mechanical insulation industry, fire stopping, and infectious disease control. Regarded as North America's energy conservation specialists, these professionals are known for their professional work and dedication. You can learn more about the Insulators Union at insulators.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org.
Now, back to Ed Flash Ferenc with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up, receive our shows on a regular basis, and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings. I'll tell you, we've been getting a lot of people signing up. So thank you. And last year, 2023, a banner year, not only did we reach 1% of all podcasts. There's 2 million podcasts in the world, 2 million. We're in the top 1%, but we had a 25% increase in listenership from 2022. Hopefully we can carry that into 2024 and beyond. By the way, this next segment brought to you in part by the Ohio Federation of Teachers. You can find more at oh.aft.org. Let's go back to our live line. Rejoin April Sims. April is president of the Washington State Labor Council. Website wslc.org. April, I want to talk about, a couple things here. Building a political program, but in order to do that, you got to get a lot of members lined up, and I know you've been doing a pretty good job on organizing. In fact, 2023 was a heck of a year. A lot of strikes, a lot of good contracts with the Teamsters, the UAW, my union, SAG-AFTRA. In fact, this year I'll be a member of SAG-AFTRA. Actually, it started out as AFTRA. 50 years ago, it was 1974. When I joined them at a radio station in Cleveland, Ohio, and still going strong, still making my monthly dues payments to the American Federation of TV Radio Artists. And I often joke that since they merged with SAG, I'm in the same union as George Clooney, but I don't make as much money. For a while, I did, because he was on strike and we have a different contract. So there was a little period there. Anyway, getting off subject here, April, let's talk about organizing, because there's an old line in labor: organize or die. You got to keep organizing. And how are we doing in Washington State, in your opinion?
I mentioned earlier, it's an exciting time. I think workers everywhere, the amount of organizing and the way that workers are winning, going on strike and winning it's lifting up the whole movement. I mean, these workers going on strike is incredibly hard. It takes a lot of bravery. And workers that go on strike are empowering the entire labor movement, right? We're all watching these incredible gains. And I think that is what's encouraging workers at Amazon and Starbucks and all of these other companies to form unions and consolidate their power. So it's a very exciting time in Washington State. Our affiliates are full steam ahead with their organizing. I mentioned earlier that we have the 3rd highest union density. We're coming for the number 2 seat, and ultimately for that number 1 spot. I've already put New York and Hawaii on notice. But in Washington State, we just passed a resolution as part of our strategic planning process to grow our organizing capacity. I think what we're looking at are our systems and structures to help our affiliates organize that were really built based on organizing models from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and our economy just doesn't work that way anymore. And we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to support the organizing work of our affiliates. So the resolution that we passed calls on us to create an organizing and growth task force to really answer that question. What is the role of the Washington State Labor Council as it relates to helping our affiliates with their organizing efforts? And how do we use our institutionally recognized power to bring our affiliates together to share resources, whether that's organizers or research or, any of the other things that you need to really win an organizing campaign? How are we sharing those resources with each other so that we can take advantage of the opportunity that we're in?
April, do you have any goals in mind when it comes to increasing that union density? I mean, 20% is pretty darn good, but okay, you got 3 more years in this term, and hopefully there'll be more terms ahead. But I'm just wondering, have you had any discussions with your team on where you possibly maybe get up to 25%? I don't know. Is there a number out there right now, April?
Well, I like the way you think. My number one goal is just passing New York right now, and coming in at the number 2 spot in terms of union density. But I think we're pretty early in the process of we're really trying to answer the question, what is our role and how do we build the capacity and the infrastructure to support that? So once we have some additional clarity from our affiliates around what help is or what resources are the most helpful, I think then we will start to build out our goal. I mean, I could come up with an arbitrary number. We want to organize another 500,000 union members before the end of my first term. But I think I want to make sure, which sounds great, but I would really like to make sure that whatever goal we come up with is a goal that the labor movement collectively has identified, and that all of our affiliates are committed to achieving that goal. So we're just not there yet, but I like the 25% density that you mentioned, and maybe I will suggest that to our affiliates.
Let's talk about political power, if you don't mind. And it's so important. It's so important that we elect the right people, especially the pro-union people. And I know I've had a number of conversations with Federation presidents. New Jersey stands out, too. They have a wonderful program where they basically take union brothers and sisters and say, okay, you did a good job as a business agent, a business manager, a union president. What do you think about running for a city council, a school board, maybe a state rep, maybe a congressional rep? I mean, we're seeing a lot of that happening. I'd like to know what's going on in your state, in Washington State, April. How are we looking in that regard?
Yeah, well, first, shout out to New Jersey and Charlie and their leadership for really building out their Path to Power, their candidate recruitment program. I think that's a model for the rest of the nation. We have a Path to Power candidate training program that we're really proud of, that we've ran a number of union members and community partners through to help make sure that we get folks elected into office that bring our values with them. And that's been a successful program that we've been running since 2015, I think modeled after New Jersey's longstanding program. But the other thing that we're doing in Washington State is really looking at how we build independent political power that's not tied to a party or an ideology, which includes looking at, whether or not there are Republicans in our state that share our values, that are running in Republican districts that we can endorse. And build, field program around so that we can build credibility with conservative union members around our political program. I mean, the reality is that 40% of union members generally, and that's across all industries and all sectors, identify as politically conservative. And we have to find a way to engage them in our political program and engage them in the labor movement so we can get them to take their MAGA hats off and put their union hats back on. And the resolution that we passed at our convention in July, building independent political power, is aimed at doing just that, really evaluating our political endorsement program, making sure that we have credibility with our endorsements, and the resolution charges us with coming up with strategies to engage politically conservative union members in our political program.
We're speaking with April Sims, president of the Washington State Labor Council, the AFL-CIO. She was elected president a little over a year ago and sworn in for her first 4-year term in January of 2023, and she's the first woman to be elected president and the first black woman elected to the presidency of an AFL-CIO federation. You mentioned in the first segment that one of the things you want to tackle is racial, economic, and gender justice. And boy, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And you know what's going on in the country. And in some days, I wonder, did we ever get out of the Civil War era? And it's scary out there. It really is. I'd like to know, under your first year in office, did you get your feet wet into this issue here? And what do you see for the rest of your term there in dealing with this, April?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you asking the question. I mean, we have been doing anti-racism work at the Washington State Labor Council since 2015, when delegates at our convention passed a resolution we affectionately refer to as Race and Labor, calling on us to take up then President Trump's call to have a conversation about the labor movement's role in dismantling and addressing systemic and institutional racism. And it's not easy work, but it's work that we're really proud to be leading on. And your listeners can find out more by going to our website and clicking on the Race and Labor tab if they're interested in seeing the various resolutions and the work that we've done around this. The resolution connecting racial, gender, and economic justice is the next step in our work. And it's really making sure that all workers see their fate connected to the fight for racial and gender justice, that this is really an economic issue. You mentioned my bio at the start of the show, and I was raised by sharecroppers. My grandparents were sharecroppers in rural Louisiana, which means they, like all of the generations before them, picked cotton just to survive. And when my grandfather realized that the landowner was shorting some of the farmers on the crop payout, he got the other families all riled up. And that created real problems for my family. The landowners sent some men to the house. They drug my grandfather out to the whipping post. They were intent on making an example out of him. But he was a strong, proud man and fought back. He narrowly escaped by using what he always referred to as his Texas Jack, which was this knife he kept tucked in his right boot. But the family knew if they found him, they'd lynch him for sure. So my family went into hiding and made their way to northern Louisiana, where my grandmother's family told him he could stay, but only if he could learn to keep his head down and his mouth shut. And my grandfather dreamt of a better life, not just for him, but for his children and his children's children. So he left my grandmother and the 5 kids in the safekeeping of her family, and he migrated to Washington in search of social and economic justice. And it was here that for the first time in his life, he earned a fair day's pay for a hard day's work. And so for me and my family and my community, the fight for racial justice and gender justice and economic justice is inextricably linked. They are the same fight, and making sure that the labor movement in Washington State is grounded in that fight is a responsibility that I feel like I have as president of the Washington State Labor Council. And the resolution that we passed connecting racial, gender, and economic justice allows us to deepen our work. And I'm really excited about it.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind they elected the right person to be the president of the Washington State Labor Council. No doubt in my mind. April Sims, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that story. And it's a story that needs to be shared because that's part of our history. It's a sad part of our history, but we have to know what happened in years past so we know where we're going. There's no doubt about that. April Sims, thank you so much. Let's keep in touch. You got a lot on your plate. Absolutely. I love talking to you. So you keep doing what you're doing. And please keep in touch with us here on America's Workforce. This show, I say this to so many guests, this show is your show as well. So please keep in touch. Can you do that?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on your show and giving me the opportunity to talk about the work we're doing here in Washington State. And I am working every day to live up to the privilege of being elected to serve in this capacity. So thank you so much.
April mentioned the website. It's WSLC.org. Do check that out, WSLC.org. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Dave Megenhardt on behalf of the United Labor Agency.
This is America's Workforce. More shows available at awfradio.com.
It takes LiUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LiUNA. Find out what it takes for LiUNA to keep America running at LiUNA.org. That's LiUNA.org.
The Iron Workers Great Lakes District Council, consisting of 8 iron worker local unions in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan, we build the skylines and bridges along the Great Lakes. With more work than ever before, the Great Lakes District Council is actively searching out the next great iron worker, whether it's building the next Intel plant or constructing a bridge to safely connect our great cities along the lake. So join the Ironworkers Great Lakes District Council today. Find out how and learn more about the council by visiting iwdistrictcouncil.com. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org.
This segment of America's Workforce is brought to you by Survey and Ballot Systems. SBS has been providing unions with secure and flexible election options for over 30 years. Visit surveyandballotsystems.com to learn more.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferenc.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be a WF Union podcast. By the way, this next segment brought to you in part by the North Coast Labor Federation. And let's go to line number 2 right now. And joining us is one of our regulars and sponsors, and that would be the United Labor Agency with their executive director, Mr. David Megenhardt. We're talking about an agency that started in Cleveland, Ohio in 1971, and Dave has been there more than half that time. How many years now? Okay, it's 2024. How many years now at the ULA, and how many years as executive director, Mr. Megenhardt?
So I've been at the ULA this year. I will be 35 years, and I've been a director for 23 of those years.
That's a long time. Well, congratulations and Happy New Year to you, and hopefully it'll be a good year for the ULA. And you're always doing something in the community. Let's talk about this counseling center. Apparently, officially launched it, and you're accepting clients. I need all the details. Go ahead, Dave.
Sure. Right. So we've established a mental health counseling center. It's kind of in conjunction with our workforce development work and our work to be able to help people get back into careers. But we noticed that, that there were large problems that people were having, and that we needed sort of more in-depth, more intense approach to it. So we have developed and we've launched, it's officially open as of the first of the year, the ULA Counseling Center. And so we are, so what that means is that we have licensed counselors that are on staff that can help people through therapy. So it's like therapy like any other. We're working out of our offices right now, and we're accepting. And so we're, and right now there's such a demand for mental health services. We felt that it was really important for us to jump into this line of work and to kind of bring the old ULA, dedication and good work that we do and bring it to this part of the needs of the community. So we're really excited about it. I think we're going to do a lot of good work. People can find us by calling the main number. They can go on the website, and there's a whole referral process that you can access through the website. We're going to be reaching out to unions as well, because it's really one of our natural constituencies. And, in the past, I think there was such a stigma about mental health, and, people didn't want to go find counseling, or they thought there was a weakness if you go to counseling. And that really is changing for the better, I think, with the recent activity of the pandemic and the change in society, the economy, how hard it can be on some people too, that then can really impact their personal life. And sometimes you need to talk to somebody. And we're going to provide that space for them. And, we really feel like this will be a value add for our unions and brothers and sisters. And for those looking for work, we can do everything from, we're going to accept everybody, right? We can accept people counseling for couples counseling, for individual counseling, youth, career counseling, if, again, they need more in-depth therapy about how, what is the next step in the career and what should they do. We can provide that as well. We take all major insurance companies, and we also accept Medicaid. So, it's a very robust answer to a need, and we look forward to developing over the next many years to make it a really important part of the community.
Oh, it's so darn important. We've been embracing this issue here on the show. We spend a lot of time, especially during September. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and we had a slew of guests talking about suicide prevention, which is ridiculously high in the trades. And I know you want to talk about the trades coming up, but it's about 4 times higher than the general population. So let's move on with these online classes. So that's good. You got the counseling center. Those of you listening to, just go to the website, ulagency.org, ulagency.org. All the information is posted there. Talk to me about these online classes. I know we touched on this last year, and I guess there's a lot available online, right?
Oh, my gosh, there's so much online available. Again, this is a way of how to rebuild your life, or how to upskill your, upskill what you need to get your next job. So we have a system called Coursera. It's an internationally known system. It has over 10,000 online courses that are available to you. We try to focus on those that will end up in micro certifications or credentials that can help people land that next job. So you can get a bachelor's degree even through Coursera, but again, we kind of focus on the shorter term training that is for skills that are in high demand, or it can augment. So it's a very basic example. Let's say you see a job ad that I want to know, the company wants you to be proficient in Excel. And you know it a little bit, but you don't know it that well. But there's courses that you can take through Coursera that can make you proficient, or even more than proficient. So sometimes it can be hard to find those courses, or you're trying to find them in the community. It's going to be somewhat difficult. But these are online. They're taught by these really great teachers and professors. There's everything from. There are people from Stanford. There are people from, Cleveland State. There are people from the University of London. I mean, it's all over the world that these experts come in and teach these classes. They're very well produced. They're very easy to follow, and they're all free when you come through the ULAs, which is great. So we've signed a contract for it. We sign you up. We register you, and you can then you have access to thousands of things of training. So, I guess the hokey thing of what are you going to do in the new year and the New Year's resolution, if you need to upskill, this is the time to do it, right? You need to get on it and really invest in yourself and take the time. And I think the very best part of it too is that it's 24/7, 365, right? So you can, if you're a single mom and you have the period of 10 p.m. to midnight where you can actually go to school and there's no school available, well, Coursera is available at any time. You can do it at any time. And so you can fit it into your schedule, and you can, work as fast as pace as you can, or go as slowly as you want to. And it's such a great resource. And we're really trying to get the word out, because we have a lot of slots available, and it's a really good opportunity for people who really want to, again, hone the skills that they have and add to those things so they're more marketable for employers, or they can get that raise that they want, or it can set up for the promotion right in the future. So it's really great stuff.
And the best part, it is free. All because of the United Labor Agency. I love that. That is good stuff. Good stuff. Got to check that out. Again, ulagency.org. One more issue here. It's called Built Environmental Outreach, and I know you and I have talked about this, and we deal with a lot of the trades here on America's Workforce, and what we're doing here is connecting the dots and making sure we go into those underserved communities and lead that pathway to the middle class. So, Dave, what's at stake here?
Well, like every other employer, every other industry, that people are worried about. I know companies and industries are worried about where the next generation of people are going to come from, right? So, there's retirements happening, the baby boom generation's retiring, and leaving the workforce, en masse. And certain building trades are one of those industries, right? They look forward, they projections, they see what their openings are, they see that they need to be aggressive in how they recruit people, and so they've teamed up. They've created the city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County has created this built environment program. They took some of the money that Joe Biden gave the cities, the ARA money, and they set it aside to do this outreach and development and training of people to go into built environments. So it's building trades, it's solar jobs, it's lead abatement jobs. It's all across that's why it's called built environment, right? So it's a kind of an overarching name for all of the jobs that will be coming up in the future. And so we're trying to, how ULA is involved in it. We're not doing the training, but what we want to do is we think it's such a great opportunity for certainly underserved populations in Cleveland, is that we're doing a series of outreach events. We did a lot of them last year throughout the summer and the fall. We went, ward by ward, neighborhood by neighborhood. We put posters up in every barbershop and convenience store, and, to really get the word out. And we're going to continue that because it's so important. It's such a great opportunity right now for a young person who wants to get into the trades or wants to get into, a career pathway that could lead to self-sustaining wages or family-sustaining wages. We know how good these jobs are. We know how important it is to have that steady, income and to grow. And, again, building trades probably one of the best training models out there in the United States with the apprenticeship model, and having that, joint apprenticeship between employers and the unions, and unions are really leading the way in training. So that's just, it's such an important thing to be able to get into, and really set yourself up for a great career in life and being able to, build and sustain a family. So we will turn over every rock. We're going to, go to every street basically and try to tell people that, we tell people, you spread the good news, right, about what it is, how you get into it, what the training is, and what the importance and availability of jobs in the building trades are. So I wanted to talk about it because it's just one of those I'm very passionate about, like all three of these things. I think all three, mental health, counseling, Coursera, and built environment, it's all kind of the same theme of investing in yourself, to help, try understanding what your needs are, understanding where you want to go, and how in having people help guide you there, right? Nobody does it alone. Nobody does it alone. And we can help in all three of those aspects.
Dave, I like what you said. Invest in yourself. And I think that is the best way to start off the new year. Invest in yourself. And you can do that with the United Labor Agency. Do go to that website, ulagency.org. We're talking about programs. You go through the ULA and you get them for free. That sounds really good, especially when you're talking about the cost of higher education today. My God, it's astronomical, but you can get a really good. Yeah, I know. That's another show, but ulagency.org. Okay, my brother, you take care. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll do this in 2 months, okay?
Okay. See you later. Bye-bye.
All right, that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Tomorrow, the president of the Building Trades and the News Guild on the strike at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.